Welcome to the Roadmap to Retirement podcast. Catherine, we're going to jump right in. How was tax season?
This is Roadmap to Retirement. Tune in for financial tips, investment strategies, and smart money moves to supercharge your retirement savings. Alex Neri, CFP, and guests are here to help you build your roadmap to retirement.
It was great this year. The thing that's a little bit frustrating, especially for people who've been paying attention to tax news, is that there's a lot of moving pieces for this year for the expected tax legislation. So that's been a little bit frustrating because a big component of what I do during tax season is planning. And so when you have all these provisions that are set to change or expire and we don't know what's going to happen, it can be a little frustrating, especially with some of the components that are retroactive. Makes it a lot of fun, but
Okay.
it's always a challenge working with the IRS.
Yeah, for sure. I probably should have started with a better introduction of who you are and what you do, but what would you like to tell the people about your tax practice and who you work with and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I'm a CPA with a specialty in working with financial advisory firms, but my heart really is in education and tax planning. So I've done a lot of continuing education for other tax professionals. And I think talking simply about tax topics is not something that is available enough out there. A lot of people are getting their tax advice from TikToks. And I can tell you for the most part, it's not good advice. So a big component of what I like doing is doing things like this where we can have conversations and I try to simplify what's going on.
Yeah, that's one of the things about today's world is I'll talk to a doctor and they're frustrated that people are getting their medical advice from WebMD. I'm talking to
Yeah.
as a financial advisor, people get different things from different social media platforms. What would you say is like the biggest misconception that you hear? Maybe just a weird one-off story about somebody that got their accounting or their tax advice from TikTok and you had to set them straight.
I would say probably the more common issue that I encounter is when you first start off in the world and you're simple W-2, like you're just working for somebody, life is simple. You can do TurboTax, you can self-prepare for the most part, right? It's not very complex. There's not high stakes for the most part. Your employer's taking out the right amount of taxes, et cetera. But the issue that I see most people run into when it comes to taxes is they wait way too long on that time. It ain't broke, I'm not going to fix it. And they'll stay in a service like that when they don't realize that they're missing so many opportunities. And especially once you switch to owning a business or you're a 1099, your whole tax life changes significantly because now you're not subject to the normal situation of, okay, all this W-2 income is going to hit your return. There's nothing you can do about it. There's really no ways that you can offset it. Once you're a 1099 or you're a business owner, you're in complete control over what those numbers are because it's based on your activities, it's based on how you're making investments into your business. It's based, just so many other components go into it. And I see a lot of people where because what they have, there's no feedback loop. They don't realize how much they're missing by not having a professional involved. And then on top of that, it's very easy to make significant errors on returns that are just expensive. So a good example of this is I had a new client come in this year who had no idea how much money he was wasting. The fact that him and his spouse were filing separate. They just did it because it was a little more administratively convenient for them. They didn't realize it was costing them $30,000 a year to do that.
Yeah, good horror story. And I think it's just humans are loss averse, or we get the idea that we're saving money by using TurboTax, or there's free software that you can use if you have a very simple return. And you get this mindset of I only want to spend $50 a year to do my return, or I want to do it for free even. And
Yeah.
it's hard to connect the dots and see the value of working with somebody that really knows what they're doing because a lot of times maybe you're not saving money in your taxes this year in 2024, 25, whatever year we're in. But by doing the proper tax planning, decades from now, hopefully you're paying a lot less taxes. And it's hard to look that far down the road, especially when you're going through life and you're busy with other things and you know that you have this April 15th deadline. You just want to get it done so you can move on with your life. I
Yeah.
think I see a lot of people making that mistake as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think and it goes the same thing with your industry, right? Where I think once you hit a certain cruising speed in adulthood for basically most people, there gets to a point where if you really want to be excellent in life, you have to know what your particular genius is, right? If you're a really great engineer or you're a really great doctor or whatever, you have to lean into making that expertise the best that it can be, because that's going to produce a really good return for you, right? Just becoming more excellent at your particular genius, the thing you enjoy doing. And so really all the other components of your life that are not that particular genius you probably should just outsource them to somebody else who that is their particular genius, and they're going to have a process, and they're the one that's hitting the refresh on if the new tax bill's going through, and they're the one that's going to catch the new thing that's changed or realize find it's just not worth your mental energy to learn how to do it. And I think in particular for financial, maybe some things in life, like I always tell people, like once you really know the value of your time, and this is just as true for W2 people as it is for business owners, once you know what the value of your time is, you really want to start subbing things out. But I think in particular for financial things, a lot of people don't realize that it's not just the cost of the service is what it is. It's the opportunity cost of that mental energy that you're having to waste dealing with it. And it's also the opportunity cost of what a person who really knows what they're doing can achieve for you if they're in the right structure. And I think in particular for taxes, how this is manifested is I'll see people where they're paying like $1,000 a year for getting their tax work done from another professional, but they're complex. They need planning. They need more pieces going on. And so they don't realize that like when you're paying for financial services, you're not really paying for the fee to that professional. You're paying for the fee plus the opportunity cost of what you didn't get. And so if you're overpaying in your taxes, your tax bill was your tax fee to your tax professional wasn't the $1,000. It was the $1,000 plus the 15 that they had you pay over extra because you didn't do proper planning. So that's the mindset I think a lot of people need to get into is realizing that, first of all, you're not going to enjoy this stuff. If you don't enjoy it, spend your time developing your particular genius, pay for professionals to deal with things, and then just make sure that you realize the opportunity cost of the different choices that you're making. And for some people it's a moot point, right? If you're simple, very simple situation, we're talking low dollar values, that's one thing. But for people where if you're sitting on significant assets or you're sitting on significant complexity in the ways that you earn your income, there's a lot of opportunities for you to leverage that to get better outcomes for yourself.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And the example I keep thinking of while you're talking about outsourcing and paying people to do things to free up your time is just like the whole world of home renovations. And I went through this own experience in my life of like when I was in my early 20s and I bought a house, I was doing everything myself. I was fixing everything. I refinished the basement, I remodeled the bathroom, everything. And part of it is at that stage of your life, maybe you just don't feel like you can afford it. And there's an
Yeah,
argument to be made on the other side of that. But
sure.
as I progress in my career, I have more financial resources, but I also value my time differently. And I
Yep.
recognize that even if I'm doing it on nights and weekends, so in theory, it's not interfering with my career, but I'm still draining myself of energy. If I'm staying up
Yep.
until midnight tonight, painting my bedroom or whatever it is, I'm not going to be as focused tomorrow morning as I would be on what I need to be focused on. And you were very generous. You sent me a book a little while ago, Buy Back Your Time. Read that, and it hits home on the same concept. And it's can you specialize in something and outsource everything else so that you're focused on doing only what you can do? And I think it's a good message. I think we're getting off topic a little bit, but we didn't really have a topic, so that's okay.
I think part of it, and this is the component I always put up, is that taxes are the tail of your life, right? Like the tail of the dog. It's the last thing that goes on, but it is a reflection in miniature of what's going on in your life, right? It's a reflection of how you're earning your income, like the things that go into it are all different areas of your life. Just the way the US codes are written are going to funnel into it. Do you have kids? Are you married? Are the kids in school? Just all the stuff, right? You have medical issues, like all of that stuff ends up flowing into the return. And so I think as a tax professional, it's something that I take seriously of just when people are thinking about this as an issue, there's bigger things at stake for just like, how do you deal with administrative things in your life? And I think a lot of people will get hung up on, oh, can I get a credit for this? Or can we do Augusta for that or home office for this? And I think to take a bigger structural step back and say, how have I organized this as a system? And then especially if you're a high earner, it's okay, now this is taking over like a third of my income. I really should be investing in making sure that this is correctly dealt with
Yeah, I
because
think for
of
a
the
lot of business
stakes.
owners, oh, I don't mean to cut
Yeah.
you off. For a lot of business owners, you're juggling all these different tasks, and if you can outsource the accounting and the bookkeeping and all that stuff, it frees up time just to do what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where I always joke with people like it's the difference between cooking Thanksgiving dinner and eating Thanksgiving dinner. If you're a business owner in your own QuickBooks or you're self-preparing tax returns, you're spending 4 hours in it. By the time you get to the end of it, you're not even able to really review it. Like you're just sick of it, right? You've just been in it versus if you have somebody else do it and then you're going to spend 4 hours on it, but it's at that high level of review and thinking through things and being more strategic. That's going to be much higher value time for
Yeah.
you.
I think this is a topic that a lot of other financial advisors listening to this might relate to. And it's when you start off in this career, like I started right out of college at 22, and you're in charge of you're the sales engine, you're prospecting, you are doing your own paperwork, you're calling people, you're responding to every email,
Yeah.
opening the accounts, every transaction, everything falls on you because you're 22 and broke. And then as you
Mhm.
progress in your career, you get to a point, hopefully, with the right mentorship where you're able to, hey, I should hire somebody to do that. So you hire your first part-time person or maybe share an assistant with somebody else and you start to get the paperwork tasks off your desk and scheduling meetings off your desks and it's I'm sure a lot of other business owners, this is just the business that I know, but a lot of other business owners can relate to that. And as you progress even further, like there's different levels to that. There's, okay, I've always done the account trading myself, but maybe at a certain point I can outsource that to somebody that's purely focused on portfolio management. And there's other examples that
Yeah.
continue to add in this.
Absolutely. And I see this across the practice of the firms that we work with. When I talk to the firm owners of, okay, who are you hiring next? What are you focusing on? What's the bottleneck in the business that's challenging you right now? And it's always changing. It's always something. And then just the level of complexity goes up over time. Because I think for a lot of business owners, especially true for firm owners, you're spinning so many plates at the beginning and you're like doing so many things poorly. And then over time you realize, okay, I'm really good at sales. So I'm going to stop doing the administrative stuff and I'm just going to focus on the client facing interactions. Or I'm really great at ops. So I'm really going to lean into that as my acumen and I'm going to find other people and find consultants to run the sales arm of this. Or I'm just going to do an acquisition of another practice so that I'm not having to do acquisition one-to-one organically. And then I will just, through my ops excellence, finance and deal with how to run the practice and grow it organically. So it's like there's so many ways that you can play the game, and it's just knowing, I think, first and foremost, like what you love the most, what you're the best, and that tends to be what you're good at, and then just becoming like truly excellent in that, and still being broad. I think Jeff Bezos talks about this. You want to be a T-shaped entrepreneur, right? Like you want to be really deep in one thing, but you have to have a certain level where you're broad and you see everything else that's going on. But really being successful is going to be about really getting that really strong depth in one particular area and being truly excellent at that, and then enough knowledge so that you can sub out the rest of the work to
Yeah.
other
I
people.
think if you do it right, you should be able to do a better job for your clients. And you should also free up your own calendar to have more time to enjoy your life or focus on whatever you want to do. And this podcast is a good example of that. I would never edit a podcast myself. I wouldn't do this, but I have a full-time marketing person who does a lot of great things for me. But because I have her, I'm able to have this conversation with you. And at the end of it, when we're done talking here, I X out of my screen and she takes it from there. She does the editing, gets it all out there. So like without having the mentality of I'm going to branch out and hire people to do different things, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the marketing things I do. I wouldn't be able to spend the time with my clients. So it all just snowballs at some point to a point where not only you're freeing up your own schedule, but you're doing more than you would otherwise.
Yeah, and it expands how many people you're able to help and serve, right? Because when you build those systems, now instead of you being bottlenecked to only being able to serve so many households, it's like now you're free to serve more. Like with the marketing leverage, like now you're free to help people who are not even clients get information that they need because you found a way to get the information out there and to multiply your impact. So I think for a lot of people when they get into the, oh, I don't want to hire people, or oh, I want to do it all myself, a big component in my mind is just if you're really trying to help people with your unique ability, you learning this skill of how to delegate is what's going to unlock you to be able to achieve that at a much higher level.
I think you strike me as well read. We talked about a few books here. Are you familiar with, I think it's Dunbar's number? Is that the right
Yes.
name? So
Yeah.
Dunbar's number, for those that don't know this, is it's basically the idea that if you look at evolutionary history, that people have always survived in these tribes of 150 to 250 people. So the thought is that you as a person only have the capacity to know about, we'll call it 200 people. And it relates back to financial planning or really any service industry. And the theory is that me as an advisor, I should only be working with about 200 clients. And if I'm working with more than that, I'm not able to do as good of a job because, like, evolutionary, I can't know that many people. And I
Mhm.
think I like to push back on that one because I do feel like what you just said is relevant. And that if you're building the right systems and processes and team around you, I definitely feel, and I know firsthand, it's possible to work with more clients and do a great job for them. A lot of financial advisors, you're in a service role yourself. Like, what has your experience been with that?
Yeah, I think just a huge component of this is if you're working with a team, all of the sudden you need to be externalizing your brain. You need to be having where your memory is something that is living in a system that your team knows how to access, that your team is supplementing, that it's something that lives outside of you. And it's the same thing for, so your memory needs to be a completely externalized system. And then on top of that, your processing. So like how you're deciding what tasks are getting done. How are you checking up on things? How are you reconciling things? How are you making sure requests are being met? All needs to live in an external system as well. And so once it's in external systems, then it just turns into, instead of your brain being the locus of where the information is held, you can get other people in. And so, yeah, you can serve 1,000 clients, 2,000 clients in these pods of service teams because you've externalized all the information into systems. And that's really the only way to do it. And especially if you're having to collaborate with people in different components of the work, it's just getting like straight communication systems down and then having protocols around how work is done, how work is communicated, how work is scheduled, and how information is stored, how SOPs are recorded. Like all of those components have to be externalized and planned.
Yeah, I'm getting like this flashback to early in my career, my manager saying, harping on me to use the CRM system, use the CRM system.
Use the
And like
CRM system.
22-year-old me was like, I can remember their names and I can remember all their information. I can remember our conversations. And I could when I had 5 clients, and now I cannot.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other component I really like, which this is something I think in particular for people in the service professions is now that we have AI note takers, that is such a lifesaver because now you can go back and you can query things of, hey, did we talk about this and this? Or, hey, how old was this kid or that kid or whatever it is that you need to pull out? And you have that memory stored, like it's completely stored. And you can even use, especially if you do in-person meetings, like there are tools for that. If you're a financial advisor listening to this, just make sure whatever you're using is compliant with your compliance department because they're picky. But that's a really big component as well of it's awesome running a business in 2025 because we just have so much more ability to store information easily and get information to the right places. But yeah, I'm always of the mindset of pretend like tomorrow you're going on vacation and just every day you log off, pretend you're going to vacation and get all the stuff that's in your head downloaded into the systems. Because then when work is over, like it really is over. You can walk away from the desk and you're not still thinking about, oh, I should have done, oh, I forgot to talk to this person about this. I think another big component too, at least for me and something that we do on our team is I'm a huge fan of this book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And basically the system that's involved is realizing that as a knowledge professional, thinking about things is work. And so instead of you just chewing the cud on different ideas or different things, that building systems for you to capture that information and then schedule it in later so that you're not just constantly, oh, like we could change this process or, oh, I want to change how we did this deliverable. You just capture that into a specific place and then you have a separate time where you review those kinds of things so that when you're not working, you're really not working. Because it's hard. I'm sure you have the same thing, Alex. It's hard to turn it off when you're like, oh, this client situation came up. And oh, that reminds me, like, I should probably tell this other client that they need to watch out for that. It's just constant.
I could be better about some of the thing that's really helped me, I think, is just becoming more proactive with everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, if like clients are calling me with questions, that means I didn't do a good enough job in either scheduling a review. So if they know the review meeting is coming up in October, they're probably not calling me with a one-off question in September. They know the review meeting is coming up. So I think by being very intentional about when our review meetings are going to be, when you're going to hear from me next, having check-in calls that are scheduled, it's made it possible for me to work with a lot more people. I'm just fielding calls all day because people aren't sure about things. They want to ask me a question and I'm answering the phone. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And I have somebody else answering the phone and saying, he'll call you back. When's a good time? And now I have a 15-minute phone call in my schedule for next Tuesday. It's just a lot more organized and easy to do.
Yeah.
I can't live in a world where people are just calling me asking questions. That's not going to work. And I don't have the information in front of me. If you call me right now and ask me a very specific question about your account and I don't have it in front of me, I can't give you a good answer. It's much better if I know we're talking. I can pull up your information ahead of time. I can study it again, refresh my memory, and then have an educated conversation with you. That's way better than not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's the number one thing of I for years now, I do not answer phone calls.
Oh,
It's just all got to be pre-scheduled because it's so true. It's so inefficient. And I think as there's a funny experiment that people will do where if you have to say A through Z and then 1 through 26, and you say A through Z and then 1 through 26, people can usually do that in 10 seconds. All right, now do it where you say A1, B2, C3, and it takes them like 3 minutes.
Sure.
And that's what happens. Like when you don't have focus time scheduled, when you don't have your calendar blocked, like it's just chaos. And then you're just reacting to things instead of deciding, okay, I have this urgent issue that's come up. Is this something that I need to make a better system around? Is this something that I need to add to regular meeting agendas? Is this even in scope of what I'm currently offering to do for the client? And then okay, do we need to have a phone call about this? Is this urgent? Or is this just a quick email? And just making decisions around things so that you can put the guardrails in terms of actual activities, but then also systems building of
Yeah.
just, okay, did a system fail? Because I shouldn't be getting pulled into an emergency. So where
There,
did the system fail?
there is a point to be made about just like training your clients almost to understand the systems, and it's you can't blame
Yeah,
them. They only know what you tell them. But if you take the time
absolutely.
during your review meetings to explain to them, hey, I know it's hard to reach me on the phone sometimes. I'm in and out of meetings all day. What you want to do if you want to get a hold of me is shoot me an email with a few times that work well for you, and I'll give you a call one of those times. Or like I use Calendly, and there's a bunch of other similar systems out there. There's that link. Go ahead and save it as a tab on your computer. And anytime you need to talk to me, you can go there. You'll be able to see my calendar, be able to pick a time that works well for you, and we can get rid of all the back and forth on the phone tag. But by having that conversation with your clients, and that's amazing because you think, okay, younger people are going to figure that out. Older people might not like that because they're not used to it. I have so many retired clients that are older than you would expect to be embracing these kinds of things. And
Yeah.
without me reaching out, I just see it pop up my calendar and it's Bob has a question, and all of a sudden I'm talking to Bob the next weekend, and he's excited and he gets it. And it's good. So I think if you're listening to this and you're an advisor and you think that you're going to have a hard time getting your clients to follow the system, they'll follow the system. You just got to explain it to them, and it's better for everybody once they do.
Yeah, and I think a component of that too, because a lot of people will do pushback on using Calendly and things like that. And I think it's not that you necessarily need to use tools like that, but just that you need to think about protecting your time and what that means, and then what level of service you really are providing. I think when people say, oh, part of the service is that you can reach me at any time, it's then how are you going to get any of your work done? That's just not, you're just going to
Yeah.
be getting pulled into a million directions. And so I think like even if you implement something where it's okay, putting an administrative person who's the initial touch point of somebody needs something, they send you an email, but it's a monitored email inbox, and the admin actually looks at it first, who's not on calls, to check like, is this something that really needs to go to Alex, or is this just like they need a quick document or something where it's like a very straightforward thing, and then creating a bit of a fence there can be helpful. Because I know too, with a lot of advisors, it's your time is really precious. And if you're getting pulled into admin tasks or hairballs or things like that, versus the value being in front of the client, providing the advice and the performance that you're expecting from people, it can be challenging. But
Yeah, yeah. Like the most common questions that we get from a call in or somebody reaching out of the blue, it's can I schedule a meeting? My admin can definitely handle that.
yep,
It's I need a distribution from my account. Admin can definitely handle that. And I'll be in the loop on it. It's not like I'm in the dark.
yep.
And other than that, it's I moved, I want to change my address or I want to change my beneficiary. It's things that by definition I'm not going to do anyway. If you call me and say, hey, Alex, I need to change my beneficiary, I'm going to hang up with you and then I'm going to go see my
And then
admin
it's
and
going to go to the
say,
admin.
yeah,
Yeah. And now you're the bottleneck if you
yeah,
do that, versus if you have something like a ticketing system. But I think just a big component of it is just the onboarding piece of it for people to understand, like, how do you communicate? How do we communicate together? How do you submit when you have a problem? And even if it's just, hey, we have one joint inbox, you can send anything you want in there and it gets ticketed and then it gets assigned out to somebody who's going to deal with it. If it needs to come to me, it will come to me. And then just have like certain things that you request people put in it. If it's got an urgency level or a due date, put it in there and we'll make sure we hit it, whatever it is. But yeah, just boundaries are good. Boundaries allow for momentum, right? If you don't have boundaries, you don't have the pressure that you need to actually get lift off.
sure. Yeah, so this conversation took a different but maybe better direction than I thought it might. I had planned on asking a little bit more about the clients you work with and how you got to the niche of working with financial advisors. And we have a few minutes, so if you want to give a short answer to why do you choose to work with financial advisors and what makes tax planning different for them than anybody else on the street?
Yeah, so I chose financial advisors. My background's always been tax, and then in particular, my preferences around tax planning. I felt like a lot of things in the normal tax professional model were broken in terms of how services are being delivered because the focus was really just on being a historian and making sure that tax filings are correct, which is totally essential. Like you do need to have correct tax returns. But when somebody's a business owner, they don't really care about did the T get crossed, did the I get dotted. The IRS cares about that. They need to know that's okay. But what they care about is the cash flow impact of the tax situation going on. And typically for businesses, especially for advisors, the practices are so dynamic that what happened last year isn't going to be a good reflection of what's going on this year. And so you need to know, okay, what are we going to owe for this year? And then what do we want to do about that? Do we want to make changes in the behaviors that we to reduce this number? Because sometimes the answer is pay the taxes because ultimately we're trying to build up the app for any business owner. The goal is to build up the value of the asset that you have for the most part. That's pretty much everybody's goal. And so sometimes paying the taxes is going to be the most efficient way to deal with that, depending on the challenges that are going on in the business. If you don't have sufficient cash reserves, you're going to have to pay taxes to build up your cash reserve if you're in a pass-through entity. Or if you're like trying to get financing, you want to show profit, and profit equals taxes. It's just so controlling some of those mechanisms, but a big component of it is just getting eyes on all of those pieces so that you know what decisions are available to you and then executing them so that you can get the changes that you want. And so that's really more of my emphasis. And I think in particular, what I love with wealth management firms in particular is I really enjoy doing education component. We didn't really talk about tax specific stuff today, but I really enjoy the education component. And I found for me, when I'm doing a lot of the education in these planning meetings with the advisor firms, they're able to take a lot of those concepts and then deploy them into their own practices when they're thinking about taxes for their clients and they're thinking about opportunity costs of different moves and how much should we really be leaning towards retirement savings and pieces like that.
Yeah, I think one of our first conversations that we had was, I don't mind talking about this, but like I had the year before we met made a very large SEP IRA contribution, and I filed an extension to do that. So I filed an extension, spent between April and October making pretty sizable contributions every month because I wanted to pay less tax than the previous tax year. And I think looking back on it, I think it's a bit of a mistake. Yes, it lowered my taxes, but I lost a lot of liquidity. I didn't have cash on hand that I could have used later in the year for other things. And as a business owner, I think it'd been more valuable to be able to reinvest that money in my business
Yeah.
versus throwing it into an IRA to lower my taxes. So I think that's a good example of what you're talking about, that you got to
Yeah.
weigh. There's the obvious choice of let's lower our taxes or save for retirement. Those are good things, but that's fine if you're a typical W-2 employee. But if you own your own business and you have cash flow demands and cash flows changing, it might make more sense to deploy cash differently. So that's one thing you helped me with, and I think it's a good
Mhm.
example for what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it starts with the end in mind, right? It's what are we actually trying to achieve right now? And then what are the best ways for you to get returns? Because I think a lot of business owners, they just don't realize this, that the value of what they're sitting on in a business, usually it has the most opportunity for them to get a return on it, especially because they know how this thing operates, right? Like you're an expert financial advisor, and okay, if I can do X, Y, and Z internally for processes, I can serve 20% more clients, or I can get 20% better results for these clients. You know what that bet is in yourself, right? You know what that would be. And okay, this is what where I need to work on things versus when you do something that's just an investment into the market, this it's now out of the locus of your control, and there's totally reasons for anybody who has a business asset to continue to do that because you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket, certainly. But in terms of just being cognizant of the fact of, especially for advisor firms, like for every extra dollar of revenue, you're getting probably a 3x return on that just in terms of asset value with the way that valuations have been going recently. And so like where else are you going to get that?
Right.
Where else are you going to get that ROI, even though it's hidden, right? Because it's hidden in the asset of the
Yeah.
practice,
Yeah, I
you
feel
know.
very confident I can beat the market. If my IRA is going to do 10%, I bet I can do better than 10% on my own business. The thing I think about, and you alluded to it, is that's assuming this 3x, three times revenue is a sales price in the future. I'm
Yeah.
33 years old. I have no idea what the value of my business will truly be, say 30 years from now when I go to sell. I'd
Yeah.
like to think that the world stays the same. I'd like to think that there'll be somebody that wants to buy my advisory business, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think part of it with that, at least in my mindset, is the if you focus on what the value of a business is, a business that is high valued in the way that valuations are done is usually a good business to run, right? It's if you've reduced key man risk, if you've systemized everything, if you've diversified revenue streams, if you've diversified, you've got a big team infrastructure so that you can handle capacity. If you've done the things that a buyer would be looking for, it's treat your future self like the buyer. It's so you don't necessarily have to sell the practice. It's just if you have the kind of mindset of I'm an investor investing into this thing, would I want to buy this thing as an investor? And what would you change in your own business? That gives you the perspective to then come back and say, okay, I'm a key man risk. Like all the knowledge is in my head. I need to start building systems so that other people can deploy this work. Like I need to hire more junior advisors or I need to hire more admin staff because we need to make sure that if somebody's out on maternity or somebody gets sick or whatever, we've diversified the risk in here. And it's like the more you focus on those things at the mindset of, okay, this is going to keep increasing the value of the practice, you could get to 30 years from now and you don't need to sell the thing. Like it's going to be cash flowing and you're not going to be embedded in it if you do it
Sure.
right. So I think for a lot of people, it's a good frame to put on, even if you don't plan on selling. Or if you
Yeah.
just plan on doing like an ESOP and you sell internally to your employees, or you have a succession plan with another family member that like a child that's working in the business that you want to give it to. It's just a good way to it's a good way to frame it as you're building it out.
Yeah, that might be the answer too, is rather than focusing on the value of selling the business, continuing the conversation we had earlier about removing yourself from the business and allowing it. Like
Yeah.
the perfect business runs without you being there. So like right
Yeah,
now,
it's an
I'm the
asset.
advisor. I'm critical to the practice. Like without me, there is no business. But maybe as I grow and scale, plugging in other advisors that can step into that role, and then you're truly in like a business owner role where you're not involved in the day-to-day operations.
Yeah, and you've built an asset that's not only valuable for you, it's valuable for the clients because they are going to get a better and more consistent experience. And it's more valuable for the employees as well because you've created an ecosystem where they can thrive. And so
Sure.
it's creating a lot of value in the economy. What that actually translates to in nuts and bolts is it's better for the clients, it's better for the employees, it's better for you.
Sure. We're on our way. We do have to cut it off there, but Catherine, thank you so much for your time. This is great. Is there one last thing you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you're interested in getting more timely like tax updates or just pensées from my experience being out in the field talking to firm owners and mistakes that I see and mindset shifts that I think need to happen, LinkedIn is a great way for us to get connected.
Okay. Catherine on LinkedIn for more tax information. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax or legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Catherine Tindall, CPA, is not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Cultivate Financial Planning.